Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. This is a DFS review video for the 2021 AT&T Byron Nelson, where KH Lee is your winner. Kyung-Hoon Lee got his first victory on tour. Congratulations. That's pretty awesome. He was one of my highest ranked 6K plays. We'll get to that later on in this video. But before I get further into the video, I want to remind you guys there are timestamps in the description below. Those timestamps can be found on YouTube's progress bar. If you're on desktop, all you have to do is hover the mouse over that progress bar. You'll find timestamps there. On mobile, you're going to have to click and drag that little knob on the progress bar up and down to find timestamps. But they are there and they're at your disposal. Go ahead and use them. I have to come clean. I watched no golf this weekend. The only day I actually got to see golf was Thursday, and that was because I was traveling Friday through Sunday. It was my girlfriend's birthday, and we went up and down the North Shore checking out all of the points of interest. It was awesome. I've lived in Minnesota pretty much my entire life. There was a couple years I lived out in California. I had never gone from like Duluth, Minnesota, all the way up to Canada and back. So this was kind of cool. Found out there's a town called Hovland, Minnesota. I was hoping it was going to be like a kind of a cool little town. It ended up being kind of a shithole. Like it wasn't good. So I hope that's not any foreshadowing for next week's PGA Championship. But yeah, no surprise that there's a Hovland, Minnesota. It's a Norwegian name, obviously. Minnesota's a bunch of Scandinavians, including myself. So yeah, but it was disappointing. If you're in Minnesota and you have not yet done that, please do so. I've been up the Pacific Coast Highway. Obviously, most of you guys have heard how beautiful that drive is. This one rivals that one. This is just pure, organic Minnesota, northern Minnesota geography. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. You have Lake Superior off to your right, with no horizon in sight. I told my girlfriend as we were driving, this kind of reminds me of Forrest Gump. He says you can't tell where the ocean begins or where the ocean ends and the sky begins. This was kind of similar. It was really cool. Blue skies. It was beautiful. So yeah, go check it out. But that's my little coming clean moment. Just to let you guys know, I didn't watch any golf, so I'm not going to have any narrative for this video. I have no idea how any of these golfers got to where they did, but we can go ahead and go over the results page and talk about some of these guys. So again, KH Lee at the top of the leaderboard. Sam Burns finishes solo second. And then we have four guys tied at third place: Patton Kizzire, Daniel Berger, Scott Stallings, and Charles Schwartzel. A lot of these guys showed up in the model for me, so we'll go over those when we get there. Troy Merritt, Joseph Bramlett, they finished 7th. Vegas, Power, Redmond, and Spieth finished 9th. And this makes it like 7 out of 9 past starts for Spieth for this season where he's finished inside the top 10. So that's really good. I mean, we're almost back to Golden Boy era Spieth, and maybe we are. And for the PGA Championship next week, he's probably underpriced. I know I think he's 10K, something like that. But yeah, Jordan Spieth did really well, or he's back in form, I should say. But that's all I'm going to talk about is top 10. Let's go ahead, get into the GPP winning lineup versus the optimal lineup. So your $5 GPP winning lineup had KH Lee, Daniel Berger, Patton Kizzire, Charles Schwartzel, Will Zalatoris, and Carlos Ortiz. If you weren't aware, everyone highlighted in blue is part of that winning lineup. The winning lineup scored 719 points, and it used up $49,900 worth of salary. So really close to that $50,000 I always tell you guys to try to aim for. So a really good lineup. Now the optimal lineup had, and JP Losman, he was the one that told me about this. This is like the second week in a row, but it's also like the 7th time in the last 9 tournaments or something like that, where we have the optimal lineup is a 10K guy, a 9K, 8K, 2 7s, and a 6. I always tell you guys, this is the general basis of building a lineup. And I firmly believe to do this. This is the second week in a row, like I said, that this is the optimal lineup. I mean, it might be generic or general for some, or basic, whatever you want to call it, but this hits more often than any other type of lineup for optimal lineup. And it's also usually the best way to build your realistic optimal lineup. And even if you haven't heard that term from me, it is trying to get as close to $50,000 and build a lineup that would beat the GPP winning lineup and be really close to the optimal lineup. So, but either way, optimal lineup, it consisted of KH Lee, Sam Burns, Scott Stallings, Daniel Berger, Patton Kizzire, and Charles Schwartzel. So everybody who was, first through third. Usually placement points don't really matter, but obviously these guys golfed really well. It was an easy golf course. That's something I forgot to mention. The winning score was 25 under. We knew this was going to be a birdie fest. TPC Craig Ranch, first time we've seen it, but from everything we'd heard, especially from like Ryan Palmer, we knew golfers were going to go low. So 25 under was your winning score. We knew that. We kind of predicted that. With that type of scoring, if you get inside the top 5, inside the top 10, your scores are just going to be that much better because you're making that many more birdies. If the whole field makes more birdies in comparison to other tournaments, those points kind of get diluted a little bit, where it all kind of, I don't want to say it all meshes into one because it really doesn't. But there really isn't that much difference. I think the most important thing is getting your bonuses, whether it's 3 in a row or it's, all rounds under 70 or bogey free round. Those are going to help in these instances. To me, I still think you always strive for all your guys inside the top 10. You want the majority of you guys inside the top 5, but you want most of them inside the top 10. They're just going to score better. It doesn't matter even if let's say they don't make as many birdies as someone who finishes 13th place. And the 13th place guys might score without placement points, 6 points more. You still want the 10, inside the 10th, inside 10th place. Like that's, to me, it's a no-brainer. Anyways, that optimal lineup scored 786.5 points. It used up 49,200. So there's a 70-point difference, pretty close to a 70-point difference between those two scores. And I would dare say this is your realistic optimal lineup. If you're not convinced 49,200 is too much, like $800 is too much to leave on the table, which I'd argue it isn't, you could go the 5 guys in that optimal lineup. So you still would have a 98776. Move to Jordan Spieth to be the other 10K guy. And this is 49,800. And you can see the difference in points between Berger and Spieth is 20. So you would sacrifice 20 points to get closer to $50,000. And so 786 turns into 766. We're still, doing way better than that winning lineup, the $5 GPP winning lineup. So that ends up being your optimal versus $5. Pretty simple. Every guy's inside the top 10. However, let's go ahead and take a look at our buckets. So we're going to go to the DK page and look at this. Can we create a bucket system lineup that would still beat the $5 GPP or even get close to the optimal lineup? So first of all, I have to remind you guys what I use as my anchor buckets. So I'm going to go to a different sheet and show you guys. If you were with me in the strategy video, you know what this is because I clearly stated it. Don't mind what we have here. You can go ahead and just erase that. Actually, you know what? I have a better way of doing this. I'm just going to scroll down. So this is what we're going to look at right here. I gave you 4 buckets to choose golfers from. Course history bucket 2, recent form bucket 3, recent form bucket 4, and last week bucket 3. And that was primarily because when we look at the summary here, those were the easiest ones to choose from. So if we were looking at, last week bucket 3, a 22.81% success rate. We had 11 golfers in the field this year versus 8.14 on average each year. To me, whenever this number is higher than the average per year and the success rate is as high as this, it's screaming this bucket's going to hit. So we forecasted somewhere between 2 to 3 golfers in the field here that would fall under that bucket. That was the first one we chose. So if we go to 2021 and we look at our last week threes, we forecasted somewhere between, oh my gosh, I already forgot it, 2 and 3. But here, let me remove this. I just want to look at everyone inside the top 10. We only have 1. So we didn't quite hit that 2 to 3 mark, but it still hit. It still finished inside the top 10. And it also was in the optimal lineup. So we can already have 1 check mark. That check mark, that works. This bucket finished inside the optimal lineup. And just to give you a refresher, what was that bucket? Those were golfers from the week prior finishing anywhere between 1st and 20th place. So that was last week bucket 3. So hopefully you guys understand that. The next bucket that we're going to look at is recent form bucket 4. And I can tell you right now there was 1. So if I were to go ahead and go down to recent bucket 4, again, we had a 28.57% success rate. I shouldn't say again, we never went over this in this video. But we had a 28.57% success rate. 9 golfers in the field versus 4 on average any given year. We had a projected 2.57. So anywhere between 2 and 3 again. When we take a look, we're looking at recent bucket 4s. We only had 1, and that was Jordan Spieth. So unfortunately, this one doesn't hit that optimal lineup, but if you recall, that hit the realistic optimal lineup. I mean, we can call the original optimal lineup that we went through the actual realistic optimal lineup, but if we wanted something a little bit closer, something closer to 50,000, Jordan Spieth would be in it. So I'm going to give myself a check. It's close enough. We're still winning a JPP if we include Jordan Spieth instead of Daniel Berger. So we're going with it. The next bucket that we looked at was recent form bucket 3. And let's take a look at the summary here. Recent form bucket 3. I forgot to tell you what recent form bucket 4 is, but hopefully you already caught on. It was over the last 8 weeks. That's what my recent form goes back to. Last 8 weeks, the average finishing position of a golfer for recent form bucket 4s were somewhere between 1 to 20. So you're playing really good golf over the last 8 weeks. Those were our recent form bucket 4s. Recent form bucket 3s are that 20 to 40 range. So anyone just north of 20 all the way to 40, if that was their average finishing position over the last 8 weeks of whatever tournaments they played, they fell under this bucket. It was a 12.36 or 12.36% success rate. We had 19 in the field this week, 15 on average. So again, when that number is higher and we have a high success rate, when we look at the projected amount, 2.35, it makes us feel good. So if we take a look at recent form bucket 3s, we have a bunch. Not a bunch, we have 3. So that hit, and boom, we have 3 golfers there in the optimal lineup. Let's go ahead and remove Charles Schwartzel because he fit this bucket. We're going to use Jordan Spieth for this one. We have 4 guys that can make up the optimal lineup. Now, unfortunately, course history bucket 2 was the wrong bucket to anchor our lineups around. And in retrospect, I understand why. This is a new tournament, or this is a new golf course where this tournament is hosting. It's being hosted by. What am I trying to say? TPC Craig Ranch. First time the PGA Tour has used this for any tournament. The first time the AT&T Byron Nelson has been there. Can't use course history buckets. In the strategy video, I told you there were tournament history buckets. Because when we look at, dating back going back to 2013, I mean, we had TPC Kalinas in 2013 through 2017. And then from there, we went to Trinity Forest Club or Trinity Forest Golf Club. So I was like, maybe, the tournament history, a lot of it just stays the same. We're including these 2 years of Trinity Forest. So it's going to, diversify that bucket. But obviously TPC Craig Ranch, really, it's extremely different, especially from TPC Kalinas, where TPC Kalinas, the lowest score was 18 under ever, like completely. Here, for our first year at Craig Ranch, 25 under. Now, Trinity Forest actually had 23 under twice. So, like, that was probably a better, comparison. However, that bucket, I mean, we can go right to it. When we look at course history bucket, everybody in this column, we see absolutely no course history bucket twos. So that, again, that was what we were trying to choose from, the golfers that were in here. Now, we were close. Like, if I were to open this up a little, actually, no, let's just go top 20. So if we look, how about top 21? We look at the top 21. If we're looking for a course history bucket 2, we've got a bunch here between 17th and 21st place. Kuchar, Noren, Leishman. They were close, but they're not going to be inside that optimal lineup. So we're not even going to talk about it as it being like, oh, we could have. But we did have 4. Like I said, we had our recent form bucket 3s, which included KH Lee and Sam Burns and Charles Schwartzel, but obviously Schwartzel was our last week bucket 3, and Spieth was our recent form bucket 4. Now, I guess what I would do differently is take a look. Let's see, what do we see? What's a commonality here? I mean, our last week buckets, but I think that's a huge bucket, right? 64 golfers in that bucket. Yeah, we're not really. What we're trying to do is find something where these buckets, if you just pay attention to what each description of those buckets are. So last week, we're taking a look for the bucket totals in the field for that week, for this week. I have right in this column here in column J, we're looking for something under 20 that we can, attach ourselves to and say, okay, that's an easy bucket to choose from. Let's see if that success rate is high, see what their projected is. So last week, bucket 5 would have been a decent one to choose from, for being completely honest. Let's see, 5 would have been good since that number is higher than the average. 6 is close. We projected 1. Last week, bucket 4, we wouldn't have looked for. And then 2 and 1, like there's just a bunch of golfers in that bucket. So we wouldn't want to choose it because it's not under 20 in that field, in the field this week. So we can go ahead and get rid of that. Now, when we look down here, course history is hard. Like I said, perhaps it's not a good way to do, like not go by course history because, this isn't the same golf course as the other golf courses that hosted this tournament. So let's go ahead and just skip course history. So let me go ahead and remove that. Again, we're looking at last week 5s. Recent forms, we hit with those. So what was that? Recent form 4 and 3. Can we find another one that's pretty decent? No, everything else is above 20. Salary buckets, those are kind of iffy, not that big of a deal. Strokes gain buckets. Now this was interesting. Usually I always select one golfer that was in strokes gained bucket 1. But if we go here, you can see in this from 10th place up, Doc Redman right here up, there's no one that's a strokes gained bucket 1. Strokes gained bucket 1, by the way, is highlighted. I highlighted all the golfers' colors so you can see Will Zalatoris is that dark green. That would be a strokes gained bucket 1. So we can see there's none, inside the top 10. But if we go back and we look at our summary, it wasn't a high success rate for the 1 year I had data here. And we're projecting 0.5. So there's a 0 to 1, between 0 and 1 chance, or not chance. We're projecting somewhere between 0 to 1 golfers in that bucket. I should have listened or at least looked at this and, determined I don't really want to jam in golfers from this bucket. Instead, look at the 2s and the 3s. The success rate isn't that high, and they're not they're not in that number that we want, so like under 20. But you can see we're projecting 2 for each, and when we go here, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3. So we have 2 strokes gained bucket 2 golfers and 4 strokes gained bucket 3 golfers. Let me go ahead and remove the top the 10 to 20 place. So yeah, 3s and 2s. We had a bunch of them. So obviously, again, that just looking at the summary, looking at our projections, this is what we probably should have gone with. And then if you look at the salary buckets, so 9K, we want somewhere between 1 and 2. 8K, we want something between 1 and 2. If we take a look, 9K, we've got 1. 8K, we've got 1. So salary buckets work out there. Then we kind of get into these half place decimals, or it's not decimals, but half point projections. So strokes gained bucket 1 was 0.5. Strokes gained bucket, are we talking about salaries? I'm sorry. 7K, you can see 2.6. So somewhere between 2 and 3. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. A bunch of 7K golfers. And we go here to 6K. We're looking at 6.5 and up. So that we had 1.4 projected. There's 1, your winner. 2, Joseph Ranlett. 3, Troy Merritt. So there are no golfers or below 6.5. That's what I've changed to. I've modified the strokes gained bucket, the salary buckets, so we no longer really look at anyone below 6.5. It's something I've just noticed. There's no point in including it. It's like for every 10 tournaments that go by, we might see 2 tournaments where under 6.5 actually finishes inside the top 10, and it's usually not close to the top 5. It's, somewhere between 7th and 10th place. I can go ahead and skip that. That's not a salary I need to pursue anymore. So 6.5 and greater, we have 3, 6.7, 6.8, and 6.9. And then we had 2 10K golfers. Summary says 0.5 for, for our projection. I don't know. I always believe you want to always select a 10K. So that worked out. This one did not. For salaries, strokes gained, that kind of stuff, it to me was pretty successful. Unfortunately, I anchored around the course history bucket, course history bucket 2. Bad choice. Again, first time seeing this tournament or seeing this golf course. A bad reason to go with course history buckets. So in retrospect, I should have just removed these guys here. But it also includes Scotty Scheffler, which was very popular. That golfer was very popular to a lot of people. Same with Mark Leishman. I had a lot of Thomas Peters, unfortunately. And some of my other guys that rounded out my lineups. Mitchell, Kuchar, Noren, Howell, Munoz. A lot of them were at the top of the leaderboard at one of the days. At the conclusion of one of the days. So they were hitting just, not all 4 rounds, which obviously you need to do. It was close, but no cigar. So we only hit 4 out of 6 from the buckets. And that was, primarily because of poor choices, poor, analysis on my part. Last week buckets, maybe we should have went with those, because if we would have went with, selecting a last week bucket 5, we already knew we wanted 3, but selecting a 5, I'm not going to look at, well, did a 6 actually make it? Last week bucket 6? No. I'm not looking at 2s and 1s. Those bucket numbers are too large to find good golfers to anchor around. Coming to recent form, 4 and 3, that made sense. And really can't really grab anything else, if we're being honest. So what do we have? We had 1, 2, 3, 4. We really had 4 buckets that we could, hammer down on. The rest of them, last week bucket 2, last week bucket 1, probably a little too difficult to really find the correct guy. If I were to open this up to everybody, if we take a look at all of our last week bucket 1 and 2s, if we went by salary, so Jordan Spieth was a part of it, Hideki, Daniel Berger. Perhaps, I guess there's an easy way to get to Sam Burns, because to me, it's always finding a 10K guy, 10K golfer, and then trying to match him up with a 9K golfer. That's usually where I start my lineups. And it would have been easy to get to Burns. Would have been easy to get to Leishman, although Leishman finished 21st, so obviously not a big deal there. But Burns was the guy. Could have easily gotten to Burns. I personally reduced ownership on Burns because I just didn't feel comfortable owning him. I just thought he'd been way too inconsistent, over his career. Sure, he won a tournament, but that didn't make me feel comfortable rostering him again. That was my mistake. I even said that in the strategy video. So unfortunately, I was wrong with that. But yeah, our last week bucket ones, I suppose everybody that was, not everybody, we don't want everybody. It was Sam Burns and either Berger or Spieth. That's where we needed to get to. Personally, I don't think I'm getting to Berger because of his course history bucket 6. If I'm thinking about this before seeing the results, I'm looking at course history bucket 6 and going, nope, not selecting him. I'll go with Spieth instead. So it's possible I could have got to Spieth and then got to Burns. Like, that was doable, but I probably also liked Mark Leishman more. I should have really played the strokes gained buckets a little bit better because, again, I wasn't looking at the projections. I was kind of going off of my usual rules of always playing 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 1s, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 2s, 1 to 3 strokes gained bucket 3s. And I usually always anchor strokes gained bucket 1 guys. So that's my fault. I unfortunately did that this week, and it didn't work out for me. Let's see. Yeah. So I guess in conclusion with the buckets, if my requirements here are selecting every bucket that is under 20 and trying to find the best one to pop out, I'm going to use 23. Last week bucket 3 hit. Recent form 4 and 3 hit. I would never look at recent form bucket 6s. I would never look at last week 6s. But last week 4 and 5s, could we have gotten there with 4 and 5s? So last week, we're only looking at 1s. 5 hit, but no 4s. So last week bucket 4 would not have hit. I'm looking at every golfer here because they're all inside the top 10. Yeah, I'm not finding that. So 5s, sure. 5 was a good one to choose. 4 is at 0.77, so that's probably, how about this? We just get rid of everybody that's under 0 or under 1. So now we're here. Last week bucket 6, we didn't see one. I'm usually never choosing 6s, so I can go ahead and get rid of those. And now it's these buckets. This is what I need to do every week. This is a good, I should think of doing this. So yeah, 9K, 8K, those are all wonderful, but really it's looking at something like this. So last week bucket 3, 5, recent form 4, 3, they all show up. The projections are high. You saw me go through all the filters. This isn't just me blowing smoke. This actually shows up. Last week bucket 3, last week bucket, or 5, 3, 5, 5. Some more 5s down here. We also have recent form bucket 3s and a 4. That works out. And then the other buckets that come into play here are 1s and 2s. And obviously 1s and 2s have a high success rate. Or not a high success rate, but they're volume driven buckets. We know that if I do something like this, you can see last week bucket 1 and 2 show up. We had high projections for those because they are volume driven. And we should have picked from those. So I guess I'm kind of kicking myself. That kind of stinks. The other thing I want to talk about, looking at just top 10s, is the SweetSpot Score. I have our number 1 ranked guy here. We have a number 6. The big takeaway for me is no one is greater than 100. We had 150 golfers in the field, 156. Nobody inside the top 10 was over 100. So we can get rid of 56 golfers easy using the SweetSpot Score. And that also needs to be refined. But if I were to, open this up to everybody and we're only going to look at golfers less than 7,000 and sort by rank, our number 1 guy is KH Lee. followed by Rory Sabatini. I want to show you guys something. I create, obviously you know the optimizer. Most of you guys know the optimizer. You see the rules. I always put rules in here. You can see I always picked a course history too. That's how I didn't win a lot of money this week, and primarily because of this. But I also set my ownerships, my max exposures to golfers. And if we come down here to, let me actually zoom in just a little bit. If we zoom into KH Lee, which I have right here, I put his max ownership at 5%. 5. And a lot of that comes from this over here. This is my ownership little spreadsheet that I'm trying to make all my calculations. KH Lee. I have right here. So total is at his averages for his course history bucket, his recent form bucket, his last week bucket, and then his ownership is just based off of this bucket's probably stupid to go by. I try not to use it that much. His min was 0, or it was 2%, but that was because of the course history bucket. If we were to remove this, his min changes to 10. So wanting to play him in 10% of lineups, and his max would be 12%. Had I done that, I'm sure I would have got on way more lineups than KH Lee. Again, he's my highest ranked guy, or I should say lowest ranked guy, but the highest scoring, or he has the highest metric for SweetSpot Score in the 6K range. Again, this is filtered by 6K and then sorted by the lower the rank is obviously the better. KH Lee was my guy. Could have gotten there easy. But unfortunately did not. So the bucket system was a little incomplete. I'm not ashamed to say that. I can't try to persuade you guys that it did work, but we had four golfers finish inside the top 10. 4 of them were in the optimal lineup, I should say. So following the buckets, that would have worked out. And then, looking in hindsight, in retrospect, seeing how the buckets unfolded as I went through the filters and sorted, I think the answers were right in front of us. We could have used those 4 buckets as our anchor buckets and then just chose from the last week bucket 1 and 2 pools of golfers and could have gotten to some golfers pretty easy. So unfortunately, didn't work out for me this week. Could have gotten there. Just kind of sloppy analysis, I think. But let's go ahead and look at all the top stat guys heading into this tournament. These are season-long stats. Let's go ahead and actually, I want to show you what Bentgrass stats look like. I do want to. Okay, what am I trying to do? Here we go. We'll keep the position here and scroll over to Bentgrass events. This one kind of kicked me in the butt a little bit. I select 0 golfers who are under 5%. So we can see Patton Kizzire just made the cut, as did KH Lee, as did Sam Burns and Charles Schwartzel. But then I would not choose Scott Stallings. I did not have him high. He was in the optimal lineup, so that one bit me in the butt. Troy Merritt, Joseph Bramlett, Doc Redman, and Seamus Power. Oh, no, not Seamus Power. So these 3 golfers, I would have automatically just excluded because their top 10 bent percentage was under 5%. So unfortunately, that did not work out in my favor. It's okay. It's fine. One guy was in the optimal lineup. Unfortunately, I would never have gotten there. I would never have gotten to the optimal lineup because of how strict I had this. But hey, people have to finish inside the top 10 every once in a while. You can see Scott Stallings had 66 events under his belt for Bentgrass events. 3% he's been inside the top 10. So I'll play the percentages all day long. Same goes with Troy Merritt. Like, I say that, but I also want to make sure I'm setting myself up the best. to hitting the optimal lineup. Scott Stallings, 7,500. He was a 63rd ranked guy in my sweet spot model. So, pretty decent. Troy Merritt, decent as well. And Joseph Bramlett, 76th ranked guy. Again, those guys are all under 100. So I might have to rethink how I'm doing the filtering when creating my player pools. Because this one didn't work out going by this. If we look at our top bent grass golfers, you can see John Rahm is at the top. Again, pay attention to the positions here. Their finishing position, that is. We have 2 guys who finished inside the top 10, 5 guys finished inside the top 20, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys who missed the cut. And again, we're looking at the top 20 stat guys in this field. So looking at this, bent grass, not really something we should have been striving for. Not for average finishing position, that is. Scrolling over, these are season-long stats provided by the PGA Tour. If we scrolled best off the tee down, off the tee really didn't matter. Many people were saying this was a bomber's course. Well, usually your best off the tee guys are bombers. We don't see that. You have 2 guys inside the top 10. We have far more missed cuts and far more just poor finishes that off the tee, to me, not the biggest stat to go by. Not just strictly by off the tee. Approach, on the other hand, pretty good. Pretty good mix of top 10, top 20s, and missed cuts. But definitely more top 10 and top 20s than we have missed cuts. So approach was actually a good stat to go by this week. Looking at it around the green, yeah, we have 4 top 10s. That's pretty good. We have just as many missed cuts, a couple more actually. So yeah, not the greatest there. And strokes gained putting. Yeah, putting definitely not the stat to go by. You guys know that I like to go by the strokes gained buckets. So it's just positive off the tee is what your strokes gained buckets 1, 2, and 3 consist of. And as we take a look at all the guys inside the top 10, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 that have positive off the tee. We have a bunch here with negative off the tee. So 4 is negative off the tee. Or it's just, let me explain this. Strokes gained bucket 4s are negative off the tee plus positive putting. And I guess I can just show you guys what that is. And then strokes gained bucket 5, those are your negative off the tee, negative putting guys. So a pretty clean mix. I would still go here first, looking at my strokes gained bucket 2s and 3s. Because I do want positive off the tee. But you needed a clean mix of positive off the tee for 3 guys in the optimal lineup and negative off the tee for 3 guys in the optimal lineup. That's why you can't just look at off the tee. You can't just look positive putting versus negative putting. You can't just go top to bottom. That's the whole purpose of me doing this. You can't look top to bottom and say, hey, our winner. So in the future, put it a different way. In the future, people are going to look at KH Lee and say, he did this really well during this tournament. Focus on those stats. That's not how this works. I hate when people do that. That is the wrong way of analysis. It's not going to show you anything. You want to look at the stats leading into the tournament, not what happened at the tournament. And even if we do look at leading into the tournament, I'm showing you right now. There's 3 positive off the tee, a bunch negative off the tee right here. We have a few more positive off the tee, guys. Let me highlight. We'll bring in the top 10. Just look at the top 10 here. And I'm going to highlight all of the positive off the tee guys. That's it. We have 6. And we have 12 golfers inside the top 10. So exactly half of them positive off the tee. The other negative off the tee. Our winner had negative approach stats. And we had 4 golfers with negative approach stats, but the rest of them did have positive. And you already saw when we sorted by that, approach was a good one. So if you did go by strokes gained approach, that worked out for you. But that's not going to be the case all the time. You still needed KH Lee in your lineup. So how do you get there if you're just looking at approach? You got to mix and match. Around the green, we never really look at this, not that big of a deal. And then when putting comes around, I mean, we have some really bad putters and we have some really good putters, and then everyone else is kind of in the middle. Here's another really good golf or putter. So yeah, we can't just sit and only look at certain stats, and we can't just look at the winner and say, hey, these were the stats the winner won with. We got to go with those. So that's my little spiel there. If we truly want to see if this is a bomber's course, we can sort by driving distance. Sure, we have 3 top 10s, but we have a bunch of missed cuts. Our top guys, this is where you're going. This is where you're going to select first from. You would have failed. It wouldn't have worked. Driving accuracy. Again, we're looking at, top down. No, that doesn't work. Good drive percentage. Not a thing. Bogey avoidance. Pretty mixed. Pretty solid in the middle. It's not terrible. Birdie or better. Yeah, that's also a pretty good mix of missed cuts and top 10s. Total birdies. Total eagles. So it's just a mix. It's always a mix. So there's really no stat you can just choose from and say, yes, this is the way to go. I like using the strokes gained bucket model that I have. That way it allows us to determine, some mix and match plays. Who are the best who have negative off the tee? Who are the best that have positive off the tee? Or maybe not. Who just has the best score? Like SweetSpot Score that has positive off the tee or negative off the tee. I mean, that's a pretty decent way to go. With that being said, I still need to refine that SweetSpot Score. I'm glad to see no one under 100 inside the top 10, or no one over 100 inside the top 10. But I bet you some of these numbers could look better had I, refined them. So there's still work to be done. Also, the optimizer kind of pigeonholed me a little bit. I have to work on that. I would give that away as a, kind of a thank you for either liking, sharing any of my stuff. But where it currently is, I want to make sure I can update it a little bit better. Because how it currently works is always looking at the top ranked guy with all the conditionals I have. And it will always select the same lineup over and over again if you don't put any constraints, like ownership constraints in there. So even if you do that, if your ownership constraints are fairly even all the way across the board, you'll still get the same. No, I mean, it depends on what you put your ownership levels to, but let's say you do it at a clean 20% for everybody in the field. Every 5 lineups is going to be one lineup. And then it's just going to work that way. You're going to have 5 lineups of 6 golfers all the way through if you were to create 100. So I have to figure out a way to create unique lineups. Because I had a lot of KH Lee with, I think it was, let's take a look. I do have everything. Do have everything archived here. I had a lot of KH Lee with Thomas Pieters. That's what ended up happening, and Thomas Pieters missed the cut. So I don't know why the optimizer does that, but it does. It doesn't have as much Thomas Pieters as I thought, but half of my lineups with KH Lee, or no, 3 of them. So I had, there were six lineups. So 3 of them had Thomas Pieters in it. So I have to figure out a way. I don't want to do that. I don't want to put KH Lee and Thomas Pieters together in that many lineups. I'd want there to be some diversification. I want to diversify. So I have to figure out how to do that. Okay, so looking forward to the PGA Championship. I'm not going to have the website ready. I'm way too much of a perfectionist to get something like that up and running before the PGA Championship. I'd have to work probably 72 hours straight without sleeping in order to actually get that done. So I'm going to wait. I think my new goal is the US Open. Now that I've been working on it, I know that it's going to take a lot longer than I initially thought. And with life going on, with plans, future plans, weekend plans, golf tournaments coming up, I don't have as many hours to work on it as I'd like or that I thought I might. So unfortunately, I can't promise that I'll get it out in the next couple weeks. I think the US Open is a pretty good goal. I think that's cutting it close, if I'm being honest. So hopefully I can beat that. But yeah, I won't have it out for the PGA Championship, unfortunately. I might give out the optimizer if I can fix the little bugs. But unfortunately, I probably won't be able to do that either. So this PGA Championship might be very, well, I don't want to say it's going to be disappointing from my end, but I would love to be able to, provide some gifts for you guys for watching and stuff like that. But I don't know. We'll see. I'll work on it. I obviously want to make sure when I'm creating my lineups that they're going to be good, instead of the optimizer kind of cycling through the same guys and putting them on the same lineups. So we'll work on that. But that's going to conclude this video. So thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. And we'll see you at the PGA Championship tomorrow. All right, bye.